Have you ever wondered where ADHD ends and you begin? In today's conversation, I'm joined by Sam Led, coach and author of the book Beyond ADHD. He brings an incredible mix of energy, insight, and lived experience to the ADHD conversation. So we explore the difference between having an ADHD brain and believing that's who you really are. What I loved about this conversation is that we don't ignore the reality of ADHD. Sam describes it brilliantly as having a racing car brain that's sometimes a bit difficult to steer, but we also explore whether there's something quieter underneath all that noise. This one really made me think, and I have a feeling that it's going to stay with a lot of you too. So Sam, I just want to start with asking you, when people hear about ADHD, they often think about struggles. And I'm wondering, what do you think the gifts of ADHD are that more rarely get talked about?
We need like a couple of episodes for that, because I think that it outweighs and always wins against the negative. I call it the experience, right? The ADHD Netflix movie between our ears. To begin with, and I've never met, and again, this work that I've been doing for a very long time. I've never met an ADHD that is not empathic.
No, same.
We feel, it's like, I say feelings for an ADHDer is like lint on a lint brush. It's just, we're experiencing our feelings in technicolor. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
If you think about what technicolor is, our parents grew up with technicolor, was the early form of color, but that type of color was so vibrant and so multi-layered and just so unique in so many different ways, that empathy is huge. And also the empathic muscle can, if we don't really reel it in, can be detrimental to our own locus of control, our own coping. And I've seen that. And I've seen that in myself.
Yeah.
Especially experiencing grief and hard times. It can be very hard to see beyond in many respects.
I really love what you're saying there, because I see that too with all my clients, because we're both ADHD coaches, and I think that the empathy thing is a huge gift, and that we feel things deeply, like you said, like technicolor almost, but that can also be a challenge, a massive challenge. And I see that with a lot of strengths. It's almost like the strength sometimes, because of the nature of ADHD, it can be quite extreme.
Yes.
We have extremes, don't we? We don't do things in a balanced
No.
do we?
No half measures. We're either all in or all out, and there's no in between. It reminds me of, and I just wanted to share this real quick. I love F1 rate. I love cars, and I'm a big petrol head. And in Europe gets the best cars. The United States, we have all these emission standards, and kind of we don't get a lot of the good stuff that you guys get. An F1 race car, it's either going 200 miles an hour or it's in the pit, like it's on or off. And we have an F1 race car kind of brain. We are, and that goes with every aspect of this thing called the human experience. That when we go all in with empathy, we're in it, and sometimes we get so caught up in it. It does become, as we were talking about in the proverbial green room, it becomes the upside down, like our favorite show, Stranger Things, and also and it can become it's something that it can become our worst enemy if we can't see beyond the movie being played up here. That's narrating our experience.
Well, I'm really glad you brought that in, because I did want to talk about that, but I didn't know we were going to talk about it so quickly, but let's do it, because
okay.
We have ADHD, so we can go back
jumping around.
Absolutely. We can go back to the gifts part. I think I do. I just love what you just said about the experience. Well, can you say it again? How did you actually say it? And what can you say a bit more
Yeah,
about it?
yeah. I always speak in metaphor because it's really hard. Language doesn't do our ADHD experience very justice at all in many respects, but that's all we got. We have this inner movie playing, right? Every human being on the planet. I call it the Netflix movie because everyone watches Netflix or Apple TV. That's constantly narrating our experience. We're not living in the world of the outside circumstances. We're not living, you know, in the outside world. We're living in the experience of our thinking. And in ADHD, our neurotype, it's going really fast. F1 race car metaphor. I'm going to use it again. I'm probably going to use it again and again and again in our conversation. And because of that, we get so caught up in this movie that's made up 100%. There's the only thing that's real is when we're present, when we're not thinking. And we do a lot of our best work as ADHDers, especially because we hyper focus on and a lot of things when we're not up in that movie. And when we see that we have this technology called thought, it's the greatest gift to humankind that's constantly narrating our second by second experience. And when we start to see there's nuance there, we're able to see what is true and what can never be true in this moment. And that awareness has saved me as an ADHDer. You and I grew up, especially in the United States here, where I call it the bad old days, where we were, well-meaning psychologists, psychiatrists, and the medical community were just throwing darts at a board. I remember when I was 7 years old, a long time ago, early 80s, and I remember kids that were being pulled out of class to be given their medication because they were diagnosed ADHD, and they would come back like I didn't know who they were. This is the early days, and again, I don't diagnose or treat disease. I'm a coach. Just my personal experience. I'm like, what is going on here? Like we're playing a chemistry set with these kids, and of course my parents delayed until I was in my 20s. I didn't start taking medication, and I stopped taking it years ago. But that to me was like, oh my goodness, like that's not the final word when it comes to seeing our omnipotential as ADHDers, and there's so many the multiplexity of gifts that we've been given as ADHDers. Again, call it a ham sandwich, doesn't matter what it is. People that have minds that work differently. And that blew me away because looking back at it, it's like they were doing their best, but thankfully we know so much more about it.
Yeah. Well, there's two things you're kind of talking about there, isn't it? There's the different brain wiring and knowing that our thoughts create our reality. How do those two things align? If our thoughts create our reality,
Yeah,
what would you say about
I
that?
love that's a great question. So I share the inside out understanding called the three principles that basically it's not outside in, it's inside out. So we have what, between 30 and 60,000 thoughts a day. It's noisy up here. It's a party up here. And we have a thought, and then our brilliant neurocomputer will take that thought, and our neurophysiology will respond to it, right? There are many days where I'm free and clear of the chatty Cathy, the noise. How do you explain that? And if I put 5 ADHDers in the same room, I'd get 5 different experiences. How do you explain that? Some people might have hyperactivity. Some people might have distractive issues. Some people get overwhelmed a lot, sensory auditory. Some people might have very little in common with the other ADHDers in the room. So and again, I'm sure neurologists in the medical community in traditional medicine will disagree with me, and that's fine. But what I've seen, what I've shared, and what I know to be true is that our neurology, our neurophysiology responds to a thought. So if I have a whole bunch of overwhelmed thoughts, our neurophysiology is going to respond in kind. And for me, that was liberating because I suffered for and sometimes we make suffering bad. Think about that. The society, we try to, medicate ourselves to suffer less. We try to avoid suffering. It's very human because nobody wants to suffer. I don't want to feel bad. I don't want to feel overwhelmed. But when we stop making suffering bad, it settles quicker.
What do
When
you
I
mean
stop
by
being,
suffering, Sam? Can we just go,
yeah,
what is that for you?
suffering meaning when when, if I'll give you an example. If I go to a conference, say like down in LA, and there's like 500 people in this huge room, sensory and auditory wise, I get overstimulated and it's very painful, right? But if I just sit with that experience and not identify with the thoughts, there's always thoughts attached to, oh my God, I'm overstimulated. I can't handle it. It's like, oh my God. Like when I can sit with it, I'll always know what to do next, whether it is to sit with it and realize that experience is being made up, right? Or common sense will tell me maybe I should go outside for 5 minutes until my mind quiets down, or not. See, it's trusting that we have this inner wisdom within us, which is the truth, that my experience is temporary and can't be trusted. It's sort of like um, everyone experiences loss or grief differently, right? Some people be like, oh, yeah, it's terrible. They move on. Some people get stuck, and have to go through the process. And some people, they get angry and they, everyone's different, right? That's the same thing with ADHD. Like, but when I started trusting that I have awareness, that I'm aware of my thinking, I'm aware of my experience, and that my thoughts aren't mine. When I do suffer, it sucks, but I don't spend as much time there anymore. I'm not saying that I'm with it. What's the very popular term? Spiritual bypass. No, there's nothing to be seen in thought. Nothing. Never has been, never will be. But all of us on this planet see our omni potential, whether you have ADHD or not, when we take our hand off our thinking and we pivot to presence. I don't make good decisions when I'm up on my house of horrors, my ADHD house of horrors. I make terrible decisions. Can you imagine if you were up in your house of horrors when you were driving? Holy cow, it'd be like road rage or you get into an accident because you can't think and drive at the same time. You're making life and death decisions when you're driving a car, and you're not even thinking about it. It's rote memory. It's common sense, right? The same thing with how we work, and that's what I'm seeing in my clients. Like it's like a breath of fresh air for them because they're like, yeah, I don't need a technique myself to calm down. I can be aware of it, and sometimes I'm going to suffer, but that's okay. And then I settle, and then I'm on to new thought. Because thought doesn't just stay stale. It's not like, you know, there was that song in the 80s. I think it was Rock Amadeus by Falco. That song would drive me crazy. You know why it would drive me crazy? Because it reminded me of my brain getting stuck in loops.
Yeah.
But then one day I changed the station and I don't listen. I hate that song. It's like, I don't need to listen to that song anymore. And I'm not saying it's all puppy dogs and ice cream. I'm not saying that we don't suffer. Sometimes we do.
I think it's a really interesting word, suffer, because really even that is a thought, isn't it?
Yes.
And
Yes.
I what I'm seeing, and I don't know if this is anything that you can speak to, is
Mm.
we've got the thoughts, like you said. They're just coming and going, and they're not ours. They're just, I don't know. Who knows where thoughts come from? They just, but
I don't want to
you know,
know.
they especially with an ADHD brain, there's a lot of them. And I think when we take those thoughts seriously and think they're true, that's when we can get into difficulty.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's
yeah,
interesting. Sorry, go ahead. Um, a colleague of mine is like the metaphor wizard. He's been a coach forever. He shares this understanding that I share. Um, and he talks about contracted thoughts and expansive thoughts, right? Like thought is like Google Translate, right? If you ever, I mean, before AI, we just had like, and AI scares me. I guess it's our generation. We're slow to adapt to new technology. Um, but he talks about contracted thoughts like stinky thoughts, right? When you can feel it in your physiology. I always feel um, when I know thought when I'm caught up in a thought storm, caught up in thought turbulence, right? It's like right in my soul. I can feel it. It's just like, oh God, here we are again, same as it ever was. But I don't want to. In those contracted thoughts, they stink. It's like a natural waste product of our thinking, right? We have thoughts that are serving us, like Google Translate that works when we type in something into Google Translate and it comes out perfectly. Sometimes when we're trying to translate something to a different language, it comes off all backwards. And we're like, that's not what I want, what do we do with waste? We don't eat it. We don't like, unless you're like into like that. I don't know, like unless you're one of those gastroenterologists needs to analyze waste. No, you flush it. You flush it down the toilet. Contracted thoughts. Whatever, whether it's anxious thoughts, overwhelmed thoughts, scary, whatever thought it is, you can't take it on as truth because it's the natural expansive and contraction of our thought thinking system. It's like car exhaust. Imagine if you put a banana in your car. Like we need to like flush the waste, right? And for me, that was liberating because sometimes I forget sometimes I forget, and I'm like, oh, this stinks. Like these thoughts stink. I'm not supposed to be eating these thoughts. I'm gonna get myself sick. I'm gonna have a nervous breakdown. Like you ever like get so caught up in your thinking, like you feel like, and I know I have, um, especially when it comes to like, I remember when I was going through a divorce, I was in such a thought loop. I'm like eating this, like God, I'm gonna have a nervous breakdown. And then I looked and I took a step back and I'm like, why am I taking this on? Who said that this is true? Who said me? No, my thinking said it was true, but that doesn't mean it's true. So you
yeah,
can play that game with yourself.
yeah. I love that, and I think how I'm seeing it, that yeah, we've got the thoughts, and we're experiencing thoughts, and we
Yeah,
experience emotion. And
yeah,
that's the bit that I think I heard you saying earlier, like that when you were saying about suffering, and I'm thinking, well, that it's a feeling. There's a physical sensation, and then there's a thought that says, what is that physical sensation? And if we say it's suffering, then we're creating resistance. So if there's emotion, and we allow all emotion, because that's what I believe, that emotion, we're humans and we're designed to feel emotions. And as we know, ADHD humans,
absolutely.
we feel a lot of emotions, don't we?
Oh boy.
Like very
Oof.
deeply. And
Yeah.
yeah, I wondered, what do you think about that? That there's the thought and then there's the emotion, and that yes, the two seem to have this feedback loop, but sometimes you
Mm.
can feel what you're feeling and realize that the thought is not really linked. Well, it can be. I've just that's gone a bit long, that question. Just sort
No, no, this is good.
if you
No,
can
I like
say
where you're
anything to
going.
that
I
question.
love. No, I love where you're going with this. For a long time, I thought that like you know, does everyone feel this way all the time? Like, because I'm very sensitive. I'm very sensitive. Listen. The paradox is I may not look like an alpha male, but I kind of am. Like, like even though I'm no, but um, I thought that everyone experiences intense emotions like everybody else. Like I remember growing up, and I remember this is like fourth grade. I must have been 10, and there was this kid whose father died very young. It was very sad, horrible. And for days, I could not stop crying about him. Like, and he was a nice guy. Like, we were 10. I'm like, this is so horrible. This poor kid, this poor kid loses his dad at 10 years old. The tears are going to start welling up right now just thinking about it. This is 1984. I mean, but that's such a beautiful thing. And my mother used to say, have your pity party, then move on. Well, that's great. That's our parents' parenting. That doesn't mean it's true. The baby boomer generation are in this country at baby. Who said that was true either? Like we're making stuff up. We're making it all up. Who said any of that is true? And the link between emotion and thought. Now you got to understand, we have this hard drive between our ears. It's constantly co-creating our experience. It's like a computer. It's like your MacBook. I'm looking into a MacBook right now. But without the user, the MacBook is useless. In fact, it's just a paper, it's a heavy paperweight. So I have this hard drive, right? From birth. Think about it. But don't think too hard. From birth, right? We're collecting data. And that like by age 6 or 7, we start realizing we have awareness of our thoughts. Like before 7, and again, I'm not an expert in this, but just I'm just going to share from my experience and what I've read online. Before 7, we have a hissy fit, we have a temper tantrum, we get over it. We drop it like it's hot. We drop our thinking, and then we're on to playing. We're playing again. There's so much wisdom to be gleaned from little kids.
Yeah.
They're the geniuses. Because they don't get caught up. Even ADHDers that were kids, they're diagnosed early, which I think is a real shame because brains aren't formed. Our brains aren't really formed till we're 26 years old, 27. But they drop it. They don't hold on to their thing. Oh my God, I can't believe that Sally said that to me. How dare that? They don't go into the drama. And then they get an awareness of their thinking more, and they start getting stuck on it as we get older. Now think of all the data that our hard drive between the ears has collected. I'm 52. That's a lot. That's a lot. Like the Library of Congress times 100. Think about that. It's insane. So what happens? Well, the ADHD experience, because our mind's going so fast. F1 race car. I'm going to use it again. It's like, I don't know if in the UK, when we were growing up, we had the Dewey Decimal System in the card catalog. Remember, you pulled out, try to find it was before computers. You would look to find out where the book is in the library. We had that.
Oh yes,
back then.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's what our hard drive's doing. So it's like, okay, Sam's rejection. The hard drive goes, okay, recall. Remember, Sam, when you were rejected in 1990? And it's going to play the same BS thinking story. We have this hard drive that's hitting play random on memories, on trauma, whatever it is. That might be in our subconscious. It might be playing in the background. And we wonder why we're suffering. Well, because most of us walking around don't have that awareness. It's very innocent because who told us this? I didn't learn this in my formative education about the power of thought, about emotional intelligence. I learned how to memorize who, the president after Lincoln was. I don't know who it is, but but you know what I mean. We were taught to memorize. We weren't taught how to command our thought and thinking system in a way that would serve our greater purpose. We were taught how to be good consumers. We were taught how to balance the checkbook. We weren't taught We have this technology called thought. We have an emotional system, and especially for ADHDers. Imagine, I mean, it's like, imagine if, say, you want to apply to the Royal Air Force, right? And you want to go to fighter pilot school. They don't just throw you in the cockpit and say, okay, good luck. Don't crash, right? No, you go through training and you learn the technology and you learn the controls and you learn the science of flight. Why don't we do that with our brain? Why don't we learn how to use our brain? We don't. We're not taught that.
I
We don't
know.
learn about all that stuff. Especially if an ADHD, I was so lost for years. I'm like, this is really scary. Like, I'm in the house of horrors all the time, and I don't know like, no one taught me how to get out of it. They would just say, okay, your brain's broken. We're going to throw medication at you. In therapy, we're going to talk about what happened to Sam when he's 13, when he was 12. What are they called? Like the inner child. I'm like, okay, but how does that help me with, getting through my day and being able to like let go of some thoughts and learn how to be the awareness of the self and understand like what works for me, what doesn't work for me. And like none of that. And that's where you and I come in to be to really be the catalyst for people to see beyond our thinking when it's not helping us.
Yeah. So, Sam, I want to ask you, I know we're both ADHD coaches. Do you think that somebody that hasn't actually got ADHD themselves can truly understand what it's like for someone that does?
It's a great question. Yes and no. Um, Most of the ADHD coaches that have ADHD are super powerful, are super effective, and are really helping their clients. Because I speak from my experience. I don't try to be like, with my clients, it's a level playing field. I'm not like speaking down to them. Like, you need to do this, this, and this. No, I speak from my experience. What has worked for Sam? What am I seeing? What observations? I'll ask questions uh, to my clients, like, you know, let's try this on for size. What is it? What are you hearing in what I'm sharing with you in a way that's really hitting you? Like, I know that there's a space where we know how to do life really well, even with our grief, even with our trauma, even with all the failures in the past, maybe even the present, where we just know how to do life, that omnipotential space. I asked my client, do you want to go there? Let's go there. I'm going to be your peace of mind Uber driver. Let's go there. Let's go on that adventure. Let's see what that's like. I know there's something else. And if you're interested, would you like to join me? Let's go there. And I'll take them on that adventure because it is the truth. Like, I don't care how successful or unsuccessful you are as an ADHDer in this current minute as you're listening to my voice. There are successes where you felt that feeling of expansiveness, presence. It's like a feel good feeling, but it doesn't feel like dopamine. You and I historically we like to chase dopamine
Oh,
for
yeah.
better or for worse. Oh yeah, but it's underneath the neurochemical noise. It's not there. All the great sages have called. It's the again. I'm not religious or anything, and I don't want to get psycho-spiritual because that's not the purpose of this. But it's kind of like, it's that um, forever space, common sense space, where we know what to do next, literally. Um, Martin Buber, he's a great, I don't know if you heard of Martin Buber. He's a great psychoanalyst, explorer of this. He called it, it's like a holy moment. It's like, oh, yeah, yes, yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah, I'm on it. Like, when I wrote my book, Beyond ADHD, if you ask an ADHD to sit down and write 35,000 words, most of us would be like, are you kidding? I can barely sit still without fidgeting myself to death. I mean, you can't see my hands, but I'm like fidgeting. I'm like, it's like a whole other thing going on. Like, but
How,
I
how
did.
did
And
you
how do
do
you
it?
explain that?
How did you write the
Well,
book?
the space that I just shared with you, where I let go of my thinking, where I didn't, I wasn't paying attention to the noise. I didn't identify with it. And I said, F it. I'm just going to write. And some people are like, how'd you do it? I'm like, I don't know. I just started typing. I just started typing. Like, that's it. See, it's kind of like, do you remember when you jumped? I remember when I was little, the deep end in the pool with the diving board, and this is back in the day when safety wasn't as paramount as it is now. I mean, you and I both grew up in that era where the playground was really dangerous. Like, wasn't like, metal slides were all metal and you would burn yourself. Like, it was, the seesaw was all metal, and like at any moment we could fall off and crack our head open. I mean, it was a different time. And I remember like climbing this tall diving board, and I'm like, I don't know, 7 or 8. I'm looking down to that, into this wide expanse, people, and I just jumped off. Yeah, there was a second it was really scary, but then I dove into the pool. Like, that's what I'm pointing to. Because once you see beyond the made up, co-created experience, the ADHD experience, you see that's not the final word. Um, you can do some cool stuff in the world. You can do some cool stuff. You can have a podcast called Gifted with ADHD, right? You can make a great living coaching. That's pretty darn cool. Or not. I mean, so like, for me, a lot of it, Juliet, was being comfortable with being in the unknown zone, the unknown zone. And for an ADHD, that's pretty scary because our mind is going so darn fast. We're breaking the thought per second speed limit every day. If there was like if the police could write if the police had a radar gun to our thoughts per second, we'd be getting speeding tickets because we'd be breaking the thought per second speeding limit every day. And that, unfortunately, we sometimes are paying attention to instead of what is true.
Well, that was what I was going to ask, actually. It was just occurring to me that I've probably got some listeners that are thinking, well, this sounds great. Yeah, this space that you're talking about, Sam. But how do I get to it? Because if they, a lot of their experience may be, and this was definitely mine, I thought, I thought that was it, that the experience I was having was this noisy mind, these fast
Yeah.
thoughts. And how do you know the difference between this wisdom that you're talking about and this space and the thoughts?
Well, the long and short of it is that we've been doing it all our life. We're just not paying attention to it because it's not sexy. It's very ordinary. It's the most ordinary, mundane experience in the entire world. It's like when I get in my car, and I love my car. I love Volkswagen. I drive Volkswagens. I love Volkswagen. I've had Volkswagens since I was 15, 16. I would just close the door and I would just smell the interior. And then I would put on Radiohead or The Fix. And I'd just be so appreciative of that moment. The familiar smell of my car, the feeling of the AC touching my face. I don't mean to sound all pithy and sanctimonious because that's not the point of this, but it's very ordinary. We drop into that space every single day, but we just don't pay attention to it because it's so darn ordinary. It's like fresh smelling, freshly brewed coffee or tea, right?
We do drink coffee, Sam.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Like a freshly brewed cappuccino.
Yeah.
When you hear someone's voice that you love. It's so ordinary. And we do it every day. Now I pay attention to it. I pay attention to it because that's where in the mundane space, that liminal space where our thinking slows down and we drop out of our thinking.
I'm feeling it now, Sam,
Yeah, it's
because
fabulous.
there's something about how you're speaking now that's quieting my mind down. And
Yeah.
I feel like I'm in that space. And I don't know if my listeners are feeling that too. I'm hoping they are, because I feel like
Yeah.
we've gone from this, great conversation, not about like that, not to have the thoughts and the fast mind, but actually, I feel like I'm really in this present moment now with you, and you're like
Yeah.
in California, and I'm in near Cambridge in the UK, and it feels like that we're in that space. That's what I'm feeling. I don't know
Well,
what
that's what,
you're feeling.
no, 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 that's what it is. You and I are connected right now. We're in presence together. We're having a great we're just two Gen Xers having a conversation. We just happen to be coaches with ADHD.
Yeah,
It's like, if you ever, like, football is really big in the UK. We call it soccer. And my colleague, who actually happens to be my coach, he's British and he's total football, crazy football guy. He subscribes to all these channels. He lives in Topanga, which is down the road in LA County and south of here. And he'll like watch a game. I forgot his team. He's going to be very upset with me because I forgot his team because he's a footballer. It's one of your amazing teams, and he just melts into the chair, and time speeds up or slows down. Like, um, the flow state is what the cool kids are calling it these days. Um,
yeah,
it's that space where we go somewhere, and again, it's really ordinary. It's so cool. And um, the only difference between you and I going there and anybody else listening is that you just got to pay attention. You know, um, it's kind of like, I remember when um, my niece was born. I don't have kids. I have a bird and a niece and nephew that I absolutely adore. And I remember meeting her for the first time. And they lived in New York, which is across the country. Live in And I remember just seeing her face. There you go. Um, my grandmother just passed away. She was 103. Um, and I remember a week before she passed, I went over to her. She had a full time aide because she couldn't take care of herself at that point. 103. I mean, I'm not going. We get there, but and I just remember walking in the apartment, and I'm saying it was like I went back to in time to when I was a little kid. And even though she wasn't really communicative, I just sat down next to her, and her essence and my essence, we were present with each other. And even though we couldn't communicate, it didn't matter. That's what I'm pointing to. Now imagine taking that experience and putting it into work, putting it into your relationships, putting it into other aspects of your life. Now, I'm not saying it's all like, Chariots of Fire or, some kind of blockbuster movie. It doesn't work that way. You're going to have your knocks. You're going to, life's a contact sport. You're going to have your horrible moments. Like we have loss and divorce and financial problems and global warming. I could go on and on. Like we're living on a planet where it, it, it always almost feels like someone's trying to kill us when we're up here. But it's funny, Juliet, when I'm up here and I go to the supermarket, right? I just get what I need and I leave. You have like Tesco there, right? Tesco. We
we
have
do.
Trader Joe's. Yeah. Well, I lived there. I love this long in the '90s. We have Trader Joe's, and then for the fancy people, we have Erewhon. I'm sure you've heard of that hoity-toity store in. Um, when I'm present, And I'm not up in the ADHD house horrors. Oh, I gotta get this. I gotta have another appointment, and and I'm just in that moment we're talking about. I say hello to, I say hello to people. I can hear the amazing music being played. I'm talking to people. I'm asking people how their day is. Like I'm actually in presence with the noise. Like in that moment, I'm not in the noise because the noise doesn't just go away when I drop out. Like I'm present, like we're talking about. It's always there,
Yeah.
but I'm not in the noise. I'm with the noise. Um,
I really
and
like.
yeah, I'm going to go back up again. Because
Yeah.
it is what it is.
I really like that, Sam, because I talk about that a little bit with the thoughts that, because I think a lot of people with ADHD, especially, I'm sure you have this with your clients. They're like, well, how do I stop these thoughts or get out of the thoughts? And I'm like, well, you don't. That you're not going to stop them. And I love,
No,
like, I know you like analogies, so and
yeah,
sports. So this might help fit with you, like
yeah,
with a football match, for example. Then there's this like ticker tape just running across the bottom all the time, isn't there? And
always.
it's like when we get attached to the thoughts or take them really seriously, we'd be running after that ticker tape or we'd be being pulled along. Whereas actually, that can just be going along at the bottom of the screen. And
Yeah,
we are not that. We're the screen.
yeah,
And the thoughts are appearing on the screen, just like the emotions are. And I think
yeah.
that's kind of what it sounds like what you're speaking to. What would you say about that?
Well, I think if you think of a projector, like thought, right? It's projecting our. I always say, and you're going to love this. We have the Dalai Lama, Shanghai Shek, and Vladimir Putin between our ears, all fighting for to get their moment in spotlight, right? And thoughts projector. It's projecting the experience onto the canvas, but you're the director. You're Martin Scorsese, right? And because I am a director, or say you're a painter, I can, if I've been painting the same story about myself onto canvas, and this is metaphorically speaking, and it's not serving me, and it's causing a lot of suffering, causing a lot of problems. Why do we keep painting the same story? Now, I'm not taking away, how tough life can be. I'm not taking away the fact that we have a lot of things that are out of control. We have life and death, as we talked about before, divorce, illness, and financial problems, and etc. But at the same time, our inner environment that we're painting our story onto, we're projecting our story onto, right? The thought and thinking story. At any time, we can, and again, this is a very 1960s kind of quote, get out of my movie, man. Like we can get rid of the old canvas and put a new canvas on and start painting a new story. And again, I'm not trying to be all like pithy and it's that easy. I'm not saying, but see, we become addicted to our stories, and especially ADHDers, we become addicted because of why. Why do we? Because we have this thing called dopamine, right? It's like, why do you have friends and family members that are stuck in the same dysfunctional relationship loop, right? Why? Why? They're addicted to dopamine and cortisol. So when you are aware of the fact that you're co-creating your experience as you hear my voice, you have agency, you have a choice or not. You want to stay painting, you want to paint that same scary, disastrous story. Go ahead. I mean, you have free will. Like we have free will, and we also have free won't. Like you think about like, and again, people are like, well, how does it get that? How do I get out of my circumstances? How do I change my circumstances? Well, it start, and again, and I don't mean to sound all Instagrammy and all like sanctimonious again, because that's not the point of this. because I'm very direct and very real, it really starts by being aware of what story you're painting, what picture you're painting. Like just being aware of it. You don't have to change. If you don't want to change anything, fine. Like no one's saying like that you have to stay in that story. But at the same time, if it's like the definition of insanity. Like, why would you keep doing that to yourself? Unless you're into self-flagellation, go for it. But otherwise, like ADHDers especially, and I'm sure you've seen this with your clients, man, we create a lot of self, whether it's self-sabotage or self-inflicted pain. In this, and again, Juliet, I as I mentioned earlier in our conversation, no two ADHDers are alike, right? We all have a different experience, and we all respond to the outside world differently. But at the end of the day, the universal truth is that we all get caught up and we all drop out at the same time. We all have that. Every human being on this planet. We know the difference between when we're in our heads and when we're present. And I there's one more thing I want to share with you about that. Like we talked about, I think I mentioned earlier, but like you can't listen and think at the same time. It's impossible. You drive yourself crazy trying to do that. But when we're listening, we're present. Like I've had a client, I'd ask a client, I said, "Are you alive? Are you here right now?" And they would say, "Yeah, I'm here." So you're not up in your head right now. If you can answer that question truthfully, you're not. It's impossible. When we're listening, we're present. When we're listening, we're not up in the ADHD house of horrors. When we're watching a movie, or yes, there's still the noise, but we're free and clear. But it's so boring and ordinary.
Well,
that we
actually,
don't pay
that's
attention to
something
it.
I just wanted to say, because actually I've heard you say that a few times, that it's so ordinary. And I agree, but I think there's an and. And it's also
Or yeah, but
incredible. It's incredible and amazing. And it's almost like the ordinariness is the fact that it actually is like what we just experienced. I experienced feeling complete and utter sort of peacefulness and clarity, and it wasn't ordinary. Actually, it was a very special. So I think there's a contradiction, isn't it? It's kind of, it seems ordinary, and we could kid ourselves that, but in one way it's kind of not.
well, let me ask you, what part of your of what you just shared with me is being narrated by the fact that you needed thought to or words to place to point to what that experience is like. You can't. We
No.
have this technology called thought, but it doesn't do the presence any justice because we don't words don't do this justice. Like when we talk about consciousness and presence, but all we have is thought. So you could say you can place descriptor words on it and say, "Yeah, it was pretty amazing." Like that expansive moment. That's why I go on walks every day. That's because I want to go there because I know that's where I'm going to come up with new ideas and um, have a holy moment amongst just walking down the street. Like you don't need to think your way there. If you try to think your way there, you're not present. Because if you think, you stink in that moment. You know, I mean,
Right.
that's what.
Oh, brilliant.
I don't know who. I don't know if it was Jimmy Page or Robert Plant. I don't know if it was them two that said, when it comes to improvisation in music, if you think, you stink. But I remember Quincy Jones saying, and Quincy Q was like a genius. He's responsible for Michael Jackson. I mean, come on. He said, sometimes you got to let a little room or leave a little room for God to come in when he's in the studio. That's that space. Like the God's, again, I'm not trying to be all, psycho spiritual, but like God is that boring space, like that nothingness, the no thingness space. And ADHDers, when we drop into that space, for whatever reason, things just click. Steve Jobs, whether you liked him or didn't like him, one of the founders of Apple, or first CEO of Apple, I don't remember, Steve Wozniak, and he was able to go there, even though when he was up in his head, he wasn't very well liked because it was very difficult to work with. But all his ideas, all his ingenious ideas for the iPhone and the iPad and the iPod, for those of you that are old enough to remember that, came from that space. And all your favorite artists and creative types, whether they're diagnosed or not, I'm very, very confident they have some form of ADHD. And you think about what's his name, Mike Rubin? No, the producer for the Beastie Boys. What's his name?
I don't
Get
know.
the long beard. Oh my God. He's oh my God, what the audience will know who this is. I think his last name is Rubin. He's a famous producer. He produced the Beastie Boys. He produced not Green Day, but one of those kind of bands. It'll come to me probably tomorrow.
Yeah.
He's like he's like, and he's a music producer, very famous music producer. He's like, I can't read music. He's like, you put a piece of music up for me. I can't read notes for the life of me. He's like, I can't. I'm not even a musician. But I drop into this space where I just know where everything should go for. I just know how to point my musicians in the right direction, and what sounds good and what doesn't sound good. That's what I'm pointing to. He's got ADHD. I forgot his name. Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Actually, Sam, I absolutely love how we're, where we gone here, this space again. And I think I'm just going to have to get you back to talk about the gifts because we've run out of time. So
oh boy,
it's been amazing. And I just want to ask though, before we finish, people might just absolutely love what you're talking about here and love your energy. And I wondered, can you tell them a little bit about how they could work with you or how to get in touch with you?
Yeah, I do. Actually, we're launching a community called Thriving, Not Surviving with ADHD community, which I would love for your input in. They can go to my website to learn more about my work. It's samledconsulting.com, LED, samled, no spaces. Or you can go to my Instagram. It's samled ADHD coach. TikTok, which is still work in progress. That's a scary world, TikTok. Samled, I think it's just Samled for sure. Instagram's, again, Samled ADHD coach. I have a YouTube channel called Samled Consulting.
You've written a book.
So yeah, and I have a book. Yeah, we launched the book 3 years ago, and it's doing really well. I can't believe it's called Beyond ADHD.
I love the title. I love the title.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we've been talking about today, isn't it?
Well, but that was proof of what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Because, ladies and gentlemen, if you asked me 10 years ago that I'd ever be able to sit down and write 35,000 words, and yeah, I had help. Yeah, I had editors, obviously, and people supporting me, but I did it. If I can do it, you can do it. That's proof. And I'm nobody special. I'm just, I'm just a coach and helping people see beyond their limitations and seeing something different. So.
Thank you so much, Sam. That's the perfect note to end on. And I will see you again, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.